Thanks so much for taking the time to come and hear what we've got to talk to you. Again, today we're here to talk to you about all the new features coming out in our InControl release 2.1.0, not 2.1.0, 2.10. Anyway, I'm Travis Sturek. I'm a product manager here at Peplink, and we're just going to dive in. I'm going to walk through what I think are kind of the highlight features here from my view. And so we'll just dabble on a couple of those, and then I'm going to dive in and just show you those in the system live, show you how they work. And then we'll jump back to the slides, and I'm going to show you all the little detailed stuff that we've been working on as well. So we'll give you a pretty comprehensive overview of all the little details in here. But again, let's just start out. If you're new to us, Peplink, it's really simple. We just want to make it always work. Whatever it is that your business, your users need to do their job. And so Peplink's all about connectivity, right? We just want your connectivity to always work. And so that's who we are. That's what we do. And InControl here is here to make that job much easier. We're here to make it scale so that you can roll something that, you know, is hard to do one-off, make that easy to roll out globally. So we can, our technology makes it really easy to solve these really challenging connectivity issues. And again, InControl is just an awesome tool to help you scale that ability to solve connectivity problems. So, like I said, there's just a handful of features in here that I think are really the kind of the stars of the show on this release. InTouch, that's a service that we launched a couple months ago, letting you access all of your remote devices, right? You got to manage all your Peplinks that are out there, but behind your Peplinks, you got a bunch more stuff, right? You've got serial devices, you've got Windows servers, you've got IP phones, cameras, right? There's just tons of devices behind all of your routers out there that you need to manage. And so we've added a lot more capabilities to InTouch to make it easier to reach even more devices out there. We've added a lot of LAN network settings into our zero-touch provisioning capabilities. So before you could push VLAN settings out, now there's a bunch more stuff that we'll talk about there that you can now do with zero-touch provisioning tools. Similarly, we've got some additional zero-touch provisioning options for route advertisement. And PepVPN, SpeedFusion, we've got dynamic weighted bonding. This is a new mode introduced in earlier firmware, and InControl now has the ability to provision these settings so that you can take advantage of that. And last but not least, there's some updates to the bulk configurator. So you've just got a little more granularity there. So first up, like I said, InTouch. This is our remote device management tool or service that we've integrated into InControl. You don't have to set up any VPNs. You don't have to set up any tunnels. You don't have to really set up almost anything. It just takes a couple of clicks for you to be able to log into a device that's behind one of your Peplink routers remotely. So again, no VPNs, no extra servers, no maintenance, no extra anything to install, manage. It's just all included within InControl and the router licenses that come with the device. So you've got what you need to get to those devices remotely. Again, I'll show you how these features all work in a little bit here. But again, the big thing for today is with InTouch, we added VNC, Remote Desktop Protocol, SSH, and Telnet. And some of you might kind of scratch your head. We've got Telnet, even VNCs maybe a little bit questionable. These aren't the most modern protocols, right? And they're not the most secure. There's, you know, especially with Telnet, there's known exploits. But nonetheless, people have devices out there that use these protocols, right? People have devices that use these protocols before there were known vulnerabilities, and oftentimes those devices serve important functions and you still got to maintain them. So this is one way that you can add a security layer around a protocol that maybe isn't secure itself. So with the security of InControl, you've got SSL encryption. So you've got really robust, strong encryption. And so you're using that encrypted tunnel that the router connects to InControl with to secure that Telnet connectivity. So you're not running Telnet through the open internet, you're wrapping it, encrypting it, and again, not having to run a bunch of infrastructure to achieve that. So it's just one more way that you can add a layer of security to these different protocols, and again, make it much more easier to reach these remote protocols instead of having to VPN in and do all this other extra work. So like I said, another one here is we've got LAN network settings. So before we had VLAN networks, so you could create a whole list of a bunch of different VLANs and use tags or whatever methods to push those VLANs out to your different routers. But there's a lot more than just a VLAN and a DHCP range. So now we've got the LAN settings, so we can get into more detailed things like static routes, virtual network mapping, DNS proxy, bonjour forwarding. I think the first two here, especially static routes, virtual network mapping, these are features that people need to be able to modify at scale. And up until this point, there have been few ways to do that from a zero-touch provisioning perspective. So we're just adding a lot more capabilities to give you more granular control from a central zero-touch experience. Another one, like I said, is route advertisement. I want to point out here too, these webinars are always an awesome experience for me too, because I always learn a ton about our products and I always notice things that I overlook. And so I think the screenshot shows one thing that I keep overlooking. We've got this little waffle icon over here. And so in this case, we're at the device level. And so I do this a lot, right? I'm at the device level, I'm looking at a specific router, and then I want to go back to a tool that's at the group level. And I always go up to the breadcrumbs at the top and I'll click on the group level, and then I'll click on the section where the tool that I want is. But this little waffle over here gets you right there without having to leave that device level. So you can see if you click on personal there, you go down to network settings, you've got the same options that you would see at the device level normally at the top. So again, just one more little tidbit that I picked up. And again, that's been there for a long time. That's not part of the new thing, but again, the more you use these systems, the more you realize that there's been a ton of thought and effort put into trying to make these systems as easy and convenient to navigate as possible. But nonetheless, the new feature here is at the bottom here, you can see OSPF RIP v2 advertisement settings. So when you've got a large SpeedFusion network, you've got a lot of remote devices with a lot of remote subnets, and you don't always want to advertise every single subnet. By default, Peplink routers will share routes for all of their subnets to all of their SpeedFusion peers. That's just how OSPF works. But again, you don't always want to advertise every single subnet to every single peer. And so with this setting, now you can come in and actually control which subnets get advertised out to the SpeedFusion network, so that you've got a lot more ability to, again, control that, restrict that, just refine what's being advertised and what's really truly a local only type of network. Now here's dynamic weighted bonding. So SpeedFusion is obviously our Peplink unique proprietary bonding technology. Lets you take multiple links, turn them into one logical link that behaves way better. So if you've got multiple cellular links, or maybe you've got a cellular plus a Starlink, or cellular plus a wireline, right? There's lots of different combinations you can look at, but regardless, dynamic weighted bonding is a new SpeedFusion algorithm that's really targeted at some of these more variable types of links, like 4G and 5G networks, like Starlink. So dynamic weighted bonding does a lot better job of combining these links that have really variable properties, right? The speed may go up or down dramatically from minute to minute. The latency may change a lot. And so previously, SpeedFusion really started out targeting wireline networks, right? We're going to bond MPLS plus a cable modem, or we're going to bond 4 DSLs together. And so those had much more consistent properties. And so now with dynamic weighted bonding, you're able to achieve much better speed and stability with these less stable links, frankly. And so now with InControl 2.10, you've got the ability to provision these dynamic weighted bonding settings, as you can see here. Again, we'll show you where these are in the system in a minute. Actually, we'll show you that right now. So we're going to jump over to the live portion here. I'm going to just walk through those features that I just showed you in the slides. And then once we're done with that, we'll come back here and we'll show you kind of all the little detailed features that we're not going to cover live. So give me just a second to switch my screen. Okay, with any luck, you guys are seeing my InControl screen now. Somebody just wants to give me a shout out in the chat and maybe let me know that you are seeing that. Cool. Thank you, Cassie. All right. So this is the InControl side of this. Like I said, we've got our group level here that we're at. There's that little waffle that I forget is there. So you can jump to some of these other settings. But first thing we're going to show you is the InTouch settings. So I've demoed InTouch a few times on a couple different webinars, but for those of you that haven't seen it, if you go to any router, let's just look at this branch number 1. Let's just look at the client list and see what we've got connected to this. So we've got 4 different clients here. You can see we've got a Peplink switch, we've got some sort of a desktop computer, we've got a printer, and then we've got a Yealink phone, right? So we've got a lot of different devices. So oftentimes you want to log into these things remotely, right? You're off at some other location, you need to help somebody with a printer, heaven forbid. But if you do, we're going to try and make it easier for you. So I'm not positive if these are the right settings for this printer, but I'm pretty sure this is going to get me there. But nonetheless, I just set up a couple quick settings. I just found a client, clicked on it, set up those few settings. If I click go, with any luck, it's going to pull up the web interface of that device. And there we are. So there's that brother printer that's behind my Peplink router that's off at some location that I'm not at. And I can get into that printer remotely with just, I think 30 seconds of setup time that I did there. And again, I didn't have to really install anything or add any infrastructure there. So that's great. But let me show you now. If we come back to this device level, or even up to the, even if we come up to the group level now, you don't have to go to the device level to get to InTouch. Once you set these up, we conveniently locate all of these InTouch devices down here, so that as you scale this up across many locations, many routers, you can easily organize these devices so they're just a lot quicker to get to. So I've set up several devices here. I've got an Aruba Wi-Fi access point. I've got this printer that we just set up. I didn't group that one. We've got this PC over here. You can see, if you hover over, you can see, okay, yep, this is behind branch 1 router. There's all its connection settings. But I've got this Windows PC, so I can just click on this. And you can see, I am now in this computer over remote desktop protocol. So again, there really wasn't a whole lot extra work to set that up compared to the web page that I showed you just a second ago. Again, that's behind this branch 1 router here. If we go check out that client list, you can see there's that same desktop computer. If we Oh, yep, there that is. Okay. Yeah, so I had that pre-set up already. I set up the username. I'm not going to show you my password, but you enter that in. You can also put the domain in there if you need. And again, this group name, this is what organizes all of these devices on that group level dashboard. So you can think of this as like a tag. So every device that you tag with the PC, so you could have 100 branches, each with a Windows PC behind it. And if you give each of those this PC's tag, now all of those are going to show up under that group on that dashboard view. And then you've got this nice little option here, accessible by organization and group viewers. So InControl is a multi-tenant system. There's different tiers of access that you can give your users so that you can control kind of who can see what. And this is one way to give your viewers access to some of these devices. So you may not want a help desk user to come in here and be able to make changes on Peplink settings, but you may want those help desk users to come in here and log in remotely to these desktop PCs or maybe to phones or some other device, right? And so this gives you that ability to give those viewer users rights to access these in-touch devices. But again, you've got that granularity to check or uncheck that box device to device. So it's not an all or nothing type of permission that you have to grant there. Okay, like we said, there's lots of other, there's SSH, Telnet. I'm not going to show you how each of those protocols work, but remote desktop is a big one that we added here. And again, SSH, Telnet, some others, but it all works the same. You just punch in the credentials, you tell it the protocol, and it's pretty straightforward. Okay, so on the LAN side, under network settings here, there's a lot of different zero-touch provisioning tools that we've had for quite a while here. Outbound policy, firewalls. These aren't new, but they're all great examples of tools that we've had here. So, for your branches, you can create a firewall rule set, and any device that's got this branch tag is going to take this firewall rule. So if I've got 1,000 branches, I can come in here and edit one policy, one firewall rule, and it will push that out to any device that has that branch tag, whether it's 1 or 1,000 devices or more, right? So just really easy centralized tools to manage all sorts of things. Again, like I said, we've also had VLANs in here for a while, so you can create different subnets, different VLANs. You can manage all those IP settings, your DHCP server, all that stuff, right? Again, this is all stuff that's been there, but there's more to a network than just your subnet and your DHCP range. When you get into bigger routed networks, you've got more and more settings that you need to be able to control and manage to just basically make it all work the way you want it to. And so similarly, I've used this router tag here to drive which devices will take this profile. You can just blank make it every device in here if you want, or again, you've got these tools that are common to just about any setting in InControl that you can choose to define the scope of these policies. But again, you've got static routes. So if you need to set up static routes to remote networks that the Peplink's just not aware of, you can add those in. And again, any device that's got this router tag is going to automatically take these routes as I add them in there. Virtual network mapping. This is a really, really useful tool that most people don't understand what it is or why they would use it. And so I'm going to explain it to you. Number one, just what the feature is, but number two, now it's in InControl, so you can manage this centrally. So virtual network mapping. Let's say I've got 1,000 pizza restaurants, right? Pizza delivery stores, and every one of those pizza delivery stores has the exact same DVR, NVR system. And basically every single store has the exact same IP scheme, right? They all have the same subnet. So every store is like the other store. No store is different in terms of their IP scheme and those things. But what if you're a service provider and you have to manage the infrastructure at all 1,000 of these locations? How do you get into those? How do you network all that? How do you make that easy for you to scale? And virtual network mapping is the answer there. So let's say I have that common defined network. Right now I've called it Verizon, but this just has to match whatever VLAN or interface name in your router. And so let's just say, maybe I made it cameras, right? This is my camera VLAN or my pizza VLAN or whatever the VLAN name is. In this case, it was Verizon. And so what I'm going to do with this feature is I'm going to take whatever that original subnet is, and I'm going to NAT it subnet wide to a different subnet. So at the store, it may be 10.0.0.1/24, but when I'm talking over Speed Fusion, I'm going to translate that 10.0.0.1 network to 192.168.0.1/24, right? So I'm going to change what I tell the outside world that network is, and then I'm going to map it back inside to whatever that real network is, subnet wide. So that's what that 1-to-1 is. That tooltip there gives you a lot more details. Many-to-one is kind of like a NAT for just the whole subnet going to one IP. So less common use case, I guess, but the 1-to-1 gives you that native direct IP experience. So if I pulled up 192.168.0.100, that would automatically route me inside of the network to 10.0.0.100, right? It's just going to give me a one-to-one NAT across that whole subnet so that I can easily deal with that. Every location is the same scenario and give me the ability to still uniquely address and reach all the different devices behind all the different locations, but again, map it together and not have all these conflicts. We've also got some other settings, DNS proxy. I'm not going to go through what all of these settings are. These are helpful, useful settings for a lot of different situations, but nonetheless, now they're in this zero-touch provisioning form factor. And our bonjour forwarding. So if you've got maybe you've got a conference room and you've got an Apple TV or something hooked up to that display, and then you've got your employee SSID, and then you've got your guest SSID. With bonjour forwarding, you can extend the AirPlay experience over to that guest SSID so that you can give them access to that conference room display. So that's just one example of how you might use bonjour forwarding. But again, now you can do that remotely. So I'm not going to change those settings. I've already set these up, and I'll show you now how those actually get implemented on the router side. Okay, so remember I used that Verizon subnet and that router tag. So if we look at this branch 2, that would be in scope of that LAN policy that I just set up. So just like InTouch, I just remoted into this Peplink web interface. So I can just show you on the router side where those settings are, and basically show you that they got filled in like I did on the IC2 side. So remember we had that static route setting in there, so that's all in there. We've got this virtual network mapping. Again, I said you just have to match that interface or VLAN name. So I matched that name. This VLAN was already in the router. I matched that up, so it automatically took that VLAN. And so it's going to translate that 192.168.102.0 subnet into this 192.168.0.1 subnet. Now, again, the beginning and the ending numberings of either of those can change either way, but that's how we basically fool the outside world into thinking that conflicting subnets don't conflict. Now, if we want to see the other side of that, I'll show you that too. Basically, I have to go to one of the SpeedFusion peers to see that virtual network getting advertised. So if I go to the cloud side, I've got this Fusion Hub over in Azure. And so we've got a connection to branch 1 and branch 2 here. If we look at the details, we can see these are all the routes that this Fusion Hub is hearing from branch 2. So we've got several different routes there, and then we've got, it says inactive right now because there's not actually any clients on that subnet right now, but I've got this subnet here, this virtual one that we've been advertising out like we talked about there. So we're basically tricking the outside world into thinking this subnet is whatever is this IP scheme instead of its actual one. Okay, so I'm also going to show you where the dynamic weighted bonding settings are now. So you can see I've already got this VPN set up, but I did that using our SpeedFusion configurator inside of InControl here. Again, this part's not new, but what's inside of it is. So I've got this VPN profile here. I've got my hub device is that Fusion Hub in Azure, and then I've got these 2 branch routers that are members of this star. If I edit it, again, you can see all those details there. These are the peers that I've added to it. Okay, and then if we check that Show Advanced Settings button, Now you can see this new thing pops up. We've got speed fusion mode bonding. That's the default, right? That's how it's always worked before. And then now we've got this dynamic weighted bonding. Again, this is much more optimized for 5G, 4G networks, Starlink, right? Any links that are quite variable, or anytime that you're matching up two links with very different speeds is another good example when you may use this. So let's say I've got a 5 meg DSL and 100 meg broadband or 100 meg cable modem. I can actually reasonably get good performance bonding those two together now with dynamic weighted bonding. I've even bonded like 200 megabit of Wi-Fi with like 20 megabit of CBRS bandwidth. So I was able to get 218 some megs of actual speed fusion throughput combining those two links together, where again, the old algorithm was really optimized towards wireline links, and it just didn't do a good job, frankly, of bonding those kinds of connection combinations. And, you know, it turns out this stuff isn't that easy, right? Bonding is complicated technology, but we make it as easy as possible. And with dynamic weighted bonding, we make it relevant in the 5G world as well. So you've got just a few new settings here to basically deal with these little nuances that you may come across as you deploy speed fusion on these different dynamic links. But again, now we're basically back to parity with the capabilities that were in the router GUI directly. So you can use InControl to push these settings out at scale instead of having to go router by router and enter these settings in there. Okay, we're going to jump back to the presentation now, and I will show you some of the other little detailed features that we've added into InControl. Okay, so here's all the little details that we've added in here. And I really wanted to make a point to call these out, because this is just a crime that we've committed so many times over the years. We're always so busy working on new features. It's just, I mean, literally every day we are working on new features constantly. And, you know, we get these ideas from our customers, right? We listen to our customers, I think, more than any vendor in the IT space that you could think of. But the problem is we don't tell anybody. You know, we make these features for one customer or another customer, and we don't do a good job of just telling people we've done these things, right? And details matter a lot sometimes. And so I'm going to show you all these little details that we've worked on now, because it might matter to you. It might not matter to you, but there will be people out there that find a lot of value in these little things that we've added too. So bulk configuration, this is a hair to split whether this is a big or a small feature, but again, if it matters to you, this is a big one. So we talked about a lot of different zero-touch provisioning tools, and we just walked through a lot of them, right? And I showed you all these great settings and dynamic things that you can do. But anytime that you ran into a situation before where there was a setting inside of the Peplink router that you couldn't find a tool inside of InControl to manage it, the bulk configurator was your way to do that in a zero-touch way. So basically, you could take a template config and clone that out to any number of devices out there, so that all of those little detailed settings would get provisioned out in bulk in a zero-touch manner. But when you use that tool, sometimes you run into situations where, you know, well, number one, InControl would strip out a few things that could potentially conflict with settings it was trying to manage. And so we've made it more intelligent now so that you can choose to preserve or strip out certain things like speed fusion settings or about policies, firewall rules, web admin, and CLI settings, right? These are settings that you may or may not be managing from the InControl side. And so we give you the choice now whether you want to preserve those in those bulk config devices that you template out with those configs. So small detail to some, but very useful to others. This back one step here. I just love this one. This one is just so helpful to me. We just put very intuitive icons next to the devices, and this is both in the router and in InControl. So you just have a good idea what the heck this device may be. So we've got desktops, we've got like audio video devices, IoT devices, phones, right? So we've tried to create as many helpful icons as we can to better identify what that device may be. Again, nothing huge, but really helpful when you're combing through a list of 50 devices and you're trying to find that one IP phone or something like that. Another small detail, but very useful, we've added the ability to authenticate against a TACACS Plus server. So if you've got 1,000 Peplink devices out there and you're a large enterprise, you've probably got a Radius or a TACACS authentication server. And just like all your other network devices, you want to centrally control who has access to that and base that off of a larger system, not onesie twosie or sharing usernames and passwords. And so now you can use the local account, but you can also change to Radius or now TACACS Plus. And you can manage all this again centrally from InControl. So you can also set, do you want the router GUI to be HTTPS? Do you want people to access that from the LAN or the WAN? And if it's from the LAN, you can restrict it maybe to a certain VLAN, right? So only one VLAN on the LAN can access the router settings and not a guest network or something like that. Another small detail, we're adding online and offline icons in the SIM card reports. So if you go to the SIM card reports, number one, that's just a super useful report. So check that out. It's at both the organization and the group level. So check out your SIM card reports, but at the bottom of that, there's this really awesome tool that basically collects all kinds of data and gives you a nice tabular display of, which router has which SIM cards and which slots and which carrier are they on, what's their IMSIs, what's their MTNs. And so, like I said, InControl is a multi-tenant system, and you've got, read-only, right? You've got a lot of different user control tiers. And so this is a tool that would be a really good one to give to an administrative user, right? Not a technical user, but, you've got billing, accounting people that they need to track down, like, where is this SIM card? What router is this SIM card in? And so this is the place where you go to connect all those dots. You can search by just about anything. You can search by IMEI, mobile telephone number, serial number, right? All those different things, and you can just zero right in. You can also just export all of this. But the only change we made in InControl 2.10 is adding this little online offline indicator here. But again, I just have to point out, number one, this feature is very useful for a lot of purposes, but now you can at the same time see if that device is online or offline as you're looking through that report. We've also added pushover support to the SIM card and SIM pool reports. Pushover is a third-party service that's quite popular for getting real-time notifications kind of broadcast out to smart devices, groups of people. And so we've had support for pushover in our notifications section, but we've not had support for it in our SIM pool section. And so the SIM pool section is how you basically keep track of your data usage across multiple devices, multiple SIMs. You can do, automatic carrier-based pools, or you can do custom-based pools. And so you've got tons of flexibility. Again, these SIM card reports and SIM pools are awesome features, but we're just adding more and more little details here to make them more useful, more actionable. So you run out of data or you get close to running out of data. Now we've got pushover support to alert some of your important staff so that they can actually act on that and, either say that's normal or implement some sort of a strategy, or just, notify the customer like, hey, look out, you're close to running a high bill. So just one more way that you can stay in the know. One other little detail here on these reports is we've just added the ability to project your monthly usage, so we can just kind of connect the dots between where you are today. If you look at the top graph, I think you can see why we added this. It was just hard, right? If you were early in the month and you looked at this report, it just always makes this month look like an anomaly, right? Whatever your present month is counting less days than every other month. And so now you've got the ability to just check that box and kind of smooth out that trend and still kind of acknowledge that with a slightly transparent line there that it is a forecast and not an actual value. But nonetheless, you can kind of take that mystery out of the graph that was there before. You've also got the ability now to opt in for certain notifications for different users. Again, multi-tenant system, so we're just giving users more and more control over their experience in there. Another really small detail here, you've been able to update your devices in bulk by CSV. So if you want to add a whole bunch of names or locations or things like that, that's been possible there with that CSV upload. But now we're going to just cross-reference and geocode whatever address is in there. If you don't put a lat long in there, we're going to geocode a street address in there. Small change, but just an FYI there. So I think that really covers all of the content. I'm just going to start pouring through the chat and the Q&A here, and feel free to throw more questions into either one of those as I look through here, and I'll try and go through and answer as many of those as I can. So give me just a minute to review what we've got there. And again, feel free to submit more. I should have said at the beginning, I did in the chat, but as always, anybody who signed up for this will get an email with a recording of it or a link to the recording of it within about 24 hours after this. So no worries if you miss something or want to share it with somebody else, you will definitely get notified and get a link to this. I see one comment about somebody tried to access something via InTouch, submit a ticket, please. Or there is a feedback button in InControl. I'm just going to show you that because speaking of things that I just really like and appreciate, that is one of them. This was not on my script for today, but I just have to show it because it's super useful. And it's one of those things that I think people think it's commonly not a useful tool. So it's kind of hidden, but there's this little feedback button right over here. And in a lot of companies, that's just a quick path to the garbage, right? You put the feedback button there and you let people feel good and they submit something and nobody ever looks at it or does anything about it, right? That's the cynical view of how those buttons often get treated. But at Peplink, that is not the case, right? That button goes straight to the InControl developers. And so it's reviewed by a very high quality person that makes this system. And so that button matters a lot. So if you get into these situations, I think InTouch is a great example of that. But you know, if you've set something up in InTouch and it's not working, that feedback button is a great way to get to the bottom of it. InTouch, you know, there's a lot of devices and there's a lot of protocols out there. So we're going to run into, and we've seen it already, right? Certain phones had some certificate quirks and all things that we were able to resolve very quickly. But again, if you find a device or something that's not working in InControl, you can just, I would click that button, highlight that. So if you just put a polite, simple description and request in there, like I said, that's going to go straight to people that actually can influence that and change that or help you. So I think that's a great way to deal with those situations. If you run into some, just frankly, anything that doesn't work in InControl, but I think the InTouch example is an especially useful one where that tool will probably shorten the amount of time it takes to solve that problem for you. All right, I'm going to keep reading through the chat and questions here. I see somebody asked about, does InTouch work with ICVA? That got answered by Cassie already as a yes, but what is ICVA? Some of you know and some of you don't, but ICVA is kind of a big deal too. ICVA is our virtual appliance version of InControl. So unlike pretty much everybody else that makes cellular routers or routers in general, you know, we've got InControl, right? Everybody's got a cloud, right? Meraki's got a cloud, Cradlepoint's got a cloud. We've all got a cloud, and InControl is our cloud. But ICVA is your ability to run that cloud yourself. So ICVA, you can run InControl at a full-fledged 100% parity experience in your own servers, on your own cloud, wherever, not wherever, but you can run it on ESXi, Hyper-V, AWS, and importantly, Amazon GovCloud. So you can run the InControl experience privately. So we're not running it. You're not sending data to us. You're sending it to your own private system. So that's a very big difference between basically, again, anybody else who makes routers out there. Is you can get a private version of InControl. You can run it on a private network. So you can have all of this experience in your own environment, and including InTouch. So long answer to a simple question, but again, I have to point out some of these details as we dig through the alphabet soup of ICVA and all the other things here. I see one question. Can you set the OSPF area from InControl rather than having to log onto the device? I'm not sure. I don't know the answer to that question. So that's one for a follow-up. I see a question. What's the minimum role on InControl to give a remote user access to InTouch devices, but not admin the Peplink itself? I kind of touched on this, I think, but you can give you check that box in the InTouch profile when you're setting up each device, and then that can give you the ability to let those viewer users get access to it, so that they would not be able to modify a Peplink, but they could still hit those InTouch devices. I see a suggestion for an InTouch dashboard, and I really love that idea, Theo. I think that would be, I think, you know, that's always a great aspect of these webinars too, is like, just like I said, we listen, so keep the feedback coming as we've got more of these new features. Tell us how you want to see them implemented, right? Help us evolve and shape what those features turn into. So Theo, the dashboard one is definitely something we'll think more about. Does InControl support LDP? I don't know LDP, but Azure AD, OAuth, SAML, there are definitely some other authentication sources that we can look to. I don't know the comprehensive list off the top of my head, but I think that would be a good one to email in and just get clarification on. There definitely are other options there, and I know there's other ones being looked at or worked on right now as well. So definitely options there, but I just don't have the answer for you right now. But I would, again, follow that one up via email with either your Peplink sales rep or just a ticket and have that one escalated to our InControl team. Great question here. I didn't really go through this at the beginning. When will this update to InControl be released? Okay, I'm going to try and find a forum post here, but in the meantime, we basically have 3 planets on InControl. So everybody basically sees the same experience, but at the very top, when you look at the URL, you're going to see a planet name: Venus, Earth, Mars. And so those all represent a different track, I would say, a deployment track. So I'm on Venus right now. Venus is our early release planet. And so Venus is where all the code goes first. And you know, after it's been developed, it goes into the wild first on Venus. And so Venus is available for any Peplink partner. You can have an organization created in Venus. And then you can put devices in there so that you can test these out and just try and use and see these features firsthand, and you know, click that blue feedback button right away, right before, you know, before it's even out to the rest of the world, and again, kind of help shape that experience. But Venus is how you would get access to these features right now, and then the release schedule after Venus, it goes to Mars, and so usually there's a 1 or 2 week delay in between those, and then after Mars, then it goes to Earth, and then after Earth, then it goes to the ICVA. And so basically there's a very structured, phased rollout of when these features hit these different planets. And so, you know, those with higher, you know, feature needs can go on the faster planets, and those with, you know, less feature needs, but more greater eye towards stability, you can go on the slower planets. Now, I'll say, I'm not saying this is a guarantee, but I run all of my production stuff in Venus, and I just have never had a problem with any sort of stability whatsoever there. So it, you know, it is the early release planet, but in my experience, it's an extremely stable one. I'm not saying you should run your customers' production networks there, but you can expect a lot from there as well, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. I see somebody unhappy about no centralized way to manage content filtering. And Craig, I feel that frowny face. I was thinking the same thing last night as I was going through some of this. So I support you. I would take your cause to the forum. That's the best place to get some more input and really make it something that we just can't ignore. But I'm with you on that one, Craig. I want to see more content filtering and the application blocking features added to InControl. So you got my vote on that one as well. I see a question. Can you bring the Peplink network into your main office network? And then they've got Meraki in parentheses. Yeah, so we put, you know, there's a lot of different ways that Peplink gets used. And, we get used as the router for networks, and we get used as just the bonding device for other networks. And sometimes we get used as, a modem, or maybe it's a bonded modem, right? There's a lot of different ways that different customers use this. And so, yeah, with existing networks, like if you've got Meraki at all your sites, you can use things like drop-in mode. So you can take your Meraki firewall that has one landline link, and some vendors are better at failover than others, and Peplink is the best at failover, right? We can do sub-second, session persistent. We can do all kinds of things to keep your applications up as you switch networks. But not every firewall or router out there is able to do that. And so if you want to add the Peplink failover experience to a Meraki network, you can just use drop-in mode. You plug it into the Peplink WAN, you plug it into the Meraki WAN, and you don't have to really change anything on the Meraki side. And then you can plug your second or third or your 4G or your 5G links on the Peplink side, and we can deliver that seamless failover experience even on a Meraki or Cisco or Juniper or any other network out there for that matter. That's just one example of how you could add on the Peplink experience to an existing network. But short answer is yes, there's lots of ways that you can combine Peplink with those other vendors. I see one question about the bulk configurator. Is there any way that the AP settings can be preserved? I don't know, but again, I think that's an excellent one to use that feedback button on. Just open that bulk config profile up and just highlight right over that spot. And I think that is the best place to ask that question. I think there's a high chance it'll make the list if you put it in there. And yeah, with Peplink, we listen to our customers more than anybody. And our first question is always why. And it's not a challenge. We just really want to understand where you're coming from, what your motivation is, what your problem is that you're trying to solve ultimately, right? That's really what we want to know when we ask why. Because, either number one, we need to know that so that we can implement it right. Or number two, maybe we have another way to solve that problem. So, don't be surprised when we ask why, right? Again, that's not a challenge. We just really want to best understand what you're trying to do so that we can get that problem solved. In terms of cost on the InControl private, there's a license cost for the server itself. You should definitely follow up with your Peplink account manager or your Peplink distributor. But from the router side, there's no difference. An InControl license is an InControl license. You can use that device on the public InControl, or you can use it on your private InControl server. So we make the device side very easy. There's nothing else you have to buy on the device side to run private InControl. You just have to, again, purchase that private InControl server license. You have to run it yourself. So you have to, be capable of running that, right? It's not a good idea for everybody to run their own InControl server because, it's kind of an important system. So don't put yourself in that situation, right? But there's lots of great reasons to do it, right? Private networks, just security postures, right? There's lots of really good reasons to run it yourself. But yeah, don't run it yourself just because chances are AWS does a better job than you may if you don't really host things yourself on a day-to-day basis, at least. Is InTouch configurable via the API? I don't know, but I love that question as well. It should be is the answer. If it's not, that's definitely one for us to follow up on. But whoever anonymous attendee is, great question. Here's a fun one. Does dynamic weighted bonding work on SpeedFusion Cloud? That one can really trip people up because SpeedFusion Cloud is, for those that have used SpeedFusion outside of SpeedFusion Cloud, it's an end-to-end experience, right? You program router 1 and you program router 2, or you program your Fusion Hub and you go program your routers, right? So there's two sides to every tunnel. And so you had to make sure that you matched settings appropriately from each side to each side before. But with SpeedFusion Cloud, you don't have to. We basically just match your settings on the cloud side. So yes, dynamic weighted bonding does work on SpeedFusion Cloud. With SpeedFusion Cloud, you always have to pay attention to what your router's SpeedFusion throughput capability is. There's a router throughput or like firewall throughput metric that is not the same as your SpeedFusion throughput. And so, if you look at like a balanced 20x, I can't remember exactly what the SpeedFusion throughput is on that, but I want to say it's around 50 megs. Well, it's a router that's capable of gigabit routing. So what, that might strike people as odd. Like, I want SpeedFusion, I want all that speed. Well, SpeedFusion oftentimes, yes, you can use it to get more upload speed. And sometimes that is exactly the problem you're trying to solve. If you're a remote video production unit, yeah, you've got this new video that I've just edited and I need to upload that fast. So yeah, that's a great example of more speed is exactly the problem I'm trying to solve. But a lot of the times people just need things to work better. And so, it's make my Zoom, make my Teams, make those things work better. And so, if you've got a balanced 20X, you don't need to send everything to SpeedFusion Cloud, right? We've got tools in there to say, only send my Microsoft or my Google or my Teams or my Zoom calls, right? You don't need more than 50 megs of Zoom throughput, right? You really only need, 1, 2, 5 megs of Zoom throughput. And so again, it's kind of a long answer here, but number one, dynamic weighted bonding definitely works with SpeedFusion Cloud, but I just want to make sure that people are understanding what SpeedFusion Cloud is and how that works with our different devices. So when you've got a device that says its SpeedFusion throughput capacity is 50 megs, you are not going to see more than 50 megs of throughput on SpeedFusion Cloud. You just won't, right? And the reason for that is, again, you protect the applications that matter the most to you. If you really do need all that upload speed out in the field, the balanced 20X just won't be the right device for your use case, right? Then you have to start looking at devices with more SpeedFusion capacity. If you're hitting those limits on SpeedFusion Cloud, then that's where you need to look. But absolutely, if you set dynamic weighted bonding, it's going to mirror that on SpeedFusion Cloud and do that to the best of the ability of the hardware device that you have. Okay, folks, well, we're about at the top of the hour here. I think we'll wrap this up for today. Lots of great questions. There's still a ton of people on here, so I'm just super appreciative that everybody took the time to come and see what all of our developers have been working tirelessly on InControl. And again, keep the feedback coming, get in the forum, hit that feedback button. We listen, we love it, and that's really what drives us. So keep it coming, and thanks again, folks. Take care.